My name is Clara Weston, and for the past 8 years, I've devoted my life to protecting history. But on a Tuesday morning in Oakland, I learned that someone else had been profiting from it instead. The Bancroft collection files sat open on my desk, their emptiness accusing me in silence. 3 rare gold rush-era documents, each valued in the 6 figures, had disappeared from our carefully monitored archives. The security logs showed access at 3:17 a.m. Sunday. Someone with administrative clearance had waltzed in like they owned the place. Damn it, I muttered, running fingers through my brunette hair. My green eyes burned from staring at inventory sheets all morning. The Oakland Museum trusted me with their most precious artifacts, and now I had to tell Adrian Calloway that we'd been robbed from the inside. The phone buzzed. "Clara, there's a detective here about stolen property." My stomach dropped. Detective Sloane Hart stood in the lobby, all sharp angles and suspicious blue eyes. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, badge gleaming against her navy blazer. She carried herself like she'd already decided I was guilty. Of something. "Miss Roberts, I need access to your evidence storage records." "What evidence storage?" "Items seized in police raids." "Your museum holds them pending court cases." I crossed my arms. "Those require judicial warrants." 3 paintings from the Morrison Gallery heist turned up at a private auction. "Trace back to your facility." The air between us crackled with tension. This woman thought I was running some kind of racket, and her accusatory tone made my blood boil. "Detective Phillips, our museum doesn't traffic stolen goods." Then explain how evidence from an active investigation ended up in rich collectors' hands. Her voice carried that particular brand of cop arrogance that made me want to slam doors. Instead, I straightened to my full height, matching her stare. "Maybe your department should keep better track of its own property before accusing honest people." Something dangerous flickered in those blue eyes. Honest people don't usually get. This defensive and competent detectives don't usually blame victims for their own departmental failures. The silence stretched between us like a loaded weapon. This blonde bulldozer wanted to tear apart everything I'd built here, and I'd be damned if I'd let her. "I'll need those records by Friday," she said finally. "You'll need a warrant by Thursday." Sloane Hart smiled then, cold and sharp. "Count on it." After she left, I stood in the suddenly quiet lobby, heart hammering against my ribs. Something told me this was just the beginning of a very long war. Saturday morning found me clipping into my bike pedals at Lake Merritt. Desperate to escape thoughts of missing documents and arrogant detectives, the Oakland Hills Cycling Club had become my sanctuary. 12 strangers who cared more about cadence than criminal investigations. "Clara, you're paired with Sloane today." Called Linda Harper, our ride leader, my stomach plummeted. Detective Phillips stood beside a sleek road bike, blonde hair catching the morning light. She wore form-fitting cycling gear that showed off legs I definitely shouldn't be noticing. "Great," I muttered. "Thrilled," she replied flatly. The others had scattered across different routes, leaving us stuck together for 40 meters of winding hills. We rode in hostile silence for the first 10 meters, matching each other's pace with stubborn determination. At the Skyline Boulevard climb, I competitive. Streak kicked in. I shifted gears and powered up the incline, testing her endurance. Sloane stayed right on my wheel, breathing steady despite the punishing grade. "Is this how you interrogate suspects?" she called out. "Torture by bicycle. Only the guilty ones struggle to keep up." She laughed despite herself, a genuine sound that caught me off guard. "You're assuming I'm struggling?" Sloane pulled ahead then, her powerful rhythm eating up the steep asphalt. Damn, if I wasn't impressed. And definitely not checking out how her shorts hugged her curves. At the summit rest stop, we shared water bottles and energy bars like a temporary truce. The autumn air was crisp, Oakland sprawling below us in a haze of golden light. "You ride like someone with something to prove," Sloane observed. Says the cop who just dropped me on that climb. Fair point. She stretched her quads against a guardrail. "Look about the museum thing." "Save it. I know you think I'm stealing artifacts." "Actually, I think you're protecting someone who is." Her words hit like a slap. I could feel anger rising in my chest, hot and familiar. "You don't know anything about?" "Me? I know you love that place enough to go down fighting for it. Admirable, but stupid if you're covering for the real thief. We descended in tense silence, taking curves at speeds that bordered on reckless. My emotions were all over the place. Fury at her accusations mixed with unwanted attraction to her fierce intelligence. The coffee shop afterward was supposed to be social time. Instead, Sloan and I sat across from each other like opposing armies. Those police evidence items, she began carefully, they disappeared the same week as your documents. Coincidence? In my experience, coincidences usually aren't. I leaned forward, letting my anger show. In my experience, cops look for easy answers instead of doing real work. And museum people live in ivory towers instead of the real world. The real world where you blame innocent people for your department's screw-ups. Sloane's blue eyes flashed. Dangerously. Innocent people don't usually have access to both crime scenes. That did it. I stood abruptly, chair scraping against concrete. This conversation is over. Clara, wait. But I was already walking away, like shaky for more than just the 40M ride. Something about Sloane Hart got under my skin in ways I couldn't afford to examine too closely. Behind me, I heard her call out, "This isn't finished." She was right, but I wasn't ready to admit what that meant. Monday night, I was pulling security footage from 3 weeks back when I saw him. Detective Grant Mercer, Sloane's partner, according to the department website, walking through our archives at 11:47 p.m. on a Saturday, long after closing, long after any legitimate police business. My hands shook as I rewound the tape. There he was again, using what looked like Adrian's master keycard to access the climate-controlled storage room, the same room where our missing documents had been kept. I called Sloane before I could talk myself out of it. "Phillips, it's Clara. We need to talk." 20 minutes later, she stood in my office studying the frozen frame on my monitor. Her blonde hair was disheveled, like I'd woken her up. The casual clothes, jeans, and a Stanford sweatshirt made her seem less intimidating and more approachable. "That's definitely Grant Mercer," she said quietly. "Your partner broke into my museum." Sloane's jaw tightened. "There has to be an explanation." "Like what?" "Late-night historical research." She turned sharply, blue eyes blazing. "Grant Mercer's been my partner for 3 years. He's not a thief. The camera disagrees. Security footage can be doctored." I stared at her in disbelief. "You think I faked this?" "I think you're desperate to clear your name and pin this on someone else." The accusation hit like a physical blow. Here I was trying to help her and she was still treating me like a criminal. "Get out," I said coldly. "Clara, get out of my office. Now." She left without another word, and I sat alone with the evidence that her precious partner was dirty. Let her figure it out the hard way. Saturday's cycling meet was awkward as hell. Sloane arrived late, looking haggarded. Dark circles under. Her eyes suggested she'd been losing sleep over our conversation. The route took us up Grizzly Peak Boulevard, a notorious climb that separated serious cyclists from weekend warriors. I pushed hard from the start, wanting to leave Sloane and her stubborn loyalty in the dust. She matched my pace effortlessly. But something was different, less aggressive, more contemplative. "I ran background checks on my entire unit," she said during a brief flat section. "Find anything interesting?" Grant Mercer's been taking a lot of unexplained personal time, and his lifestyle's gotten expensive lately. I kept my mouth shut, syncing my breathing to the cadence of my pedals. Let her process her partner's betrayal. On her own. On the worst incline, Sloane shot up beside me. I'd checked the museum's guest log from that night, and Adrian Calloway had signed Grant Mercer in as his visitor. That froze me in place. I braked hard, forcing Sloane to loop back. Horns blared while we hovered on the slim shoulder. The bay glittered miles below. Adrian was in it. "Looks that way. Your boss and my partner in the same mess." The treachery slid in like a blade between my ribs. Adrian had hired me, coached me, sold me on the museum's mission, and the whole time, he'd been moving pieces of our collection out the back door. "Shit," I breathed. "Yeah, shit." We stared at each other over the space between our bikes. For once, Sloane's expression showed more than suspicion, maybe recognition. "So what now?" I said. Now we see how deep it runs. The downhill was brutal, all switchbacks and steep drops, but trailing Sloane felt safer than riding alone. Her strong shoulders cut the wind, and I trusted the lines she chose without thinking. By the time we rolled onto level ground, something essential had shifted. We weren't on opposite sides anymore. We were facing the same enemy. Coffee? She asked as we unclipped. Only if you promise not to accuse me of running an international art ring. Deal, but I'm allowed to judge your coffee shop picks. For the first time since this blew open, I smiled. A real one. Maybe Detective Sloane Hart wasn't the problem after all. Wednesday night, I stayed late, reorganizing the banker files, trying to gauge what else might be gone. After hours, the museum. It felt eerily hollow, only the climate system humming and my footsteps bouncing along marble halls. At 9:30, the security siren split the quiet like a banshee. Motion sensors in the east wing near the storage rooms where Grant Mercer had skulked a few weeks back. Ice raced through my veins as I fumbled for my phone. Fingers shaking, I punched. 911, Oakland Police. What's your emergency? Break-in at the Oakland Museum. Someone's inside. I curled up in my office with the lights dead, heart pounding against bone. Every shadow looked hostile. Every building creak made me jump. When footsteps stopped at my door 20 minutes later, I almost screamed. Clara, it's Sloane. I cracked the door. She was in full cop mode, hand near her sidearm, blue eyes sweeping the corridor, but when she saw my face, something protective moved across her features. You good? I think so. The sensors tripped in East Storage. Show me. We moved through the dim museum together, my badge opening restricted doors. Sloane flowed with practiced confidence, checking corners and sight lines like muscle memory. I kept close, drawn to the safety she radiated. The storage room looked untouched, but Sloane found what I'd missed: fresh scratches around the electronic. Lock. Someone tried to override the panel, she murmured, fingertips tracing the gouged metal. Pro job. They knew what they were doing, but they didn't make it in. Your call probably spooked them. In that shadowed room, the weight of it all landed: the missing documents, Adrian's betrayal, Grant Mercer's rot, and now a break-in while I was here alone. I should have seen this coming, I whispered. Adrian hired me right out of grad school. I trusted him completely. Sloane turned from the lock, her expression softening. Trust isn't a flaw, Clara. It's why you're good at this. Being good doesn't count if I can't protect what I'm meant to protect. Hey, she stepped closer, close enough that I caught the faint trace of her perfume under the leather of her jacket. You did protect it. You flagged the theft. You tied it to Grant Mercer, and you scared off whoever came tonight. Her voice gentled in a way I hadn't heard. This wasn't Detective Phillips grilling a suspect. This was Sloane setting someone who needed it. I was terrified, I admitted, sitting in the dark hearing steps in the hall. That's normal. Fear keeps you breathing. We were standing very close now, and I noticed how the emergency lights caught in her blonde hair, how her blue eyes seemed to look straight through my guard. The air between us hummed with something I wasn't ready to name. Thank you, I said, softly, for showing up, for not deciding I was crying wolf. Clara. Her reply was a whisper. Something tilted in that instant. The friction that defined us thinned out, replaced by a charge that quickened my pulse. Her gaze flicked to my mouth for a heartbeat before she caught herself. We should finish the sweep, she said, stepping back. Even so, as we cleared the building, I noticed she stayed close, fingers brushing mine when she guided me around a corner, insisting on walking me to my car after. Lock your doors, she told me as I slid behind the wheel. And call if anything feels off, anything. Sloane, she turned, one brow raised. I might have misread you. A slow smile unfolded across her face, softening the hard lines into something warm. Same here, Roberts. Same here. Driving home through empty streets, I couldn't shake the scene in that storage room, the way she looked at me. The live wire in the air that had nothing to do with stolen artifacts or crooked cops. Maybe Detective Phillips was becoming something far more dangerous than an adversary. Maybe she was becoming someone I could fall for. Saturday afternoon, I drifted along Piedmont Avenue's antique shops, trying to clear my head after another sleepless night of thinking about Sloan. The attempted break-in had rattled me more than I admitted, and I needed space from the case and from my tangled feelings. Earl Donovan's secondhand treasures held decades of Oakland in its crowded aisles. Vintage furniture, old photos, boxes of forgotten bits. I was sifting through tarnished jewelry when something snagged my attention, a police badge. Circa the 1960s, tucked between costume brooches and broken watches. The Oakland PD seal was unmistakable, and badge number 347 rang a bell. I lifted it, feeling the real brass weight in my hand. "That's a special piece," a gravelly voice said behind me. I turned to the shop owner, a thin man with silver hair and alert eyes. His tag read Earl Donovan. "How much?" I asked. "For you, 20. But fair warning, someone else has been asking about that badge. My pulse quickened. What kind of someone? Earl glanced around. The guy caught maybe. Came in yesterday, asking if anyone had bought police memorabilia lately. The description fit Grant Mercer. My grip tightened around the badge. "Did you tell him anything?" "Told him what I tell everyone. I mind my business." His weathered face turned serious. "But you should know that badge came from a set that probably shouldn't have been split, if you catch my drift." I paid and hurried out, thoughts racing. Back at my place, I pulled our police exhibit catalog and found that badge 347 had belonged to Sergeant Thomas Keeve. Killed in the line of duty in 1963, it belonged in our permanent collection, not in a box at a thrift shop. I called Sloan at once. "We need to talk," I said when she answered. "I found something big." "Clara, what's wrong?" "You sound shaken. Just can you come over? I'll explain." 40 minutes later, Sloan stood in my living room, studying the badge, under my desk lamp. She was off-duty, in jeans and a dark sweater that framed her athletic lines. I tried not to stare at how right she looked in my space. "This is definitely museum property," she said. "Question is, how did it land there?" "Grant Mercer's been dripping artifacts into the market piece by piece, but Earl says someone's asking who's buying." Her face darkened. "They're mapping who's getting too close. The implications hit like cold surf. We know we're digging, which means we're targets." She set the badge down and faced me fully. In the soft light of my apartment, far from fluorescent halls, Sloan looked younger, less armored. "Clara, I need to tell you something about Grant Mercer." "What? We worked as partners for 3 years, but we were never close. He kept his life sealed. I figured it was professional distance. Now I think he was hiding more than I wanted to see." I heard the hurt in her voice, the shock of learning someone you'd trusted with your life was lying all along. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I know what it feels like when someone you respected turns out to be a criminal." I was going to say a stranger. We stood across my living room, both sorting through wrecked trust. In that shared wreckage, something else took root. "Clara," Sloan said, softer now, "I owe you an apology. I treated you like the enemy when I should have been listening. We both made calls. No, it was more than that. I was drawn to you the moment I walked into that museum. It pissed me off, so I acted like a jerk." My heart stuttered. "Drawn?" She stepped closer, blue eyes intent. "You were fierce about your work, fierce about guarding history. I've never met anyone like you." The confession hung between us, bright with possibility. I felt the pull of her nearness, the warmth lifting from her skin. "Sloan, I know this complicates things." "The case, us. I don't care about complications." Before doubt could wedge in, I closed the distance. Her breath hitched as my fingers traced her jaw, trembling. "You sure?" she whispered. Instead of words, I kissed her. Soft at first, careful like we both feared crossing a line we couldn't recross. Then her arms wrapped me in, the kiss turning hungry, desperate. When we finally parted, breathless, she rested her forehead to mine. "This changes everything," she murmured. "Good," I said. "I'm done with the old everything." The warehouse address came from cross-referencing badge serials with old evidence logs. Over 2 days, we mapped Grant Mercer and Adrian's pipeline. Pieces disappearing from police evidence and museum storage, reappearing at private auctions. Tuesday night, we rolled toward the industrial district in Sloane's unmarked sedan, both tense, knowing we were stepping into danger without backup. If this goes bad, she started. It won't, I said, though my hands shook. From the street, the warehouse looked dead, but light leaked from high windows. Sloane parked 2 blocks away, and we crept in on foot, hugging the gaps between streetlights. Through a cracked dock door, we saw our history laid out like a private showroom. The missing gold rush papers. Police evidence I recognized from news. Years of Oakland story, price for the highest bidder. There, Sloane breathed, pointing at a figure evaluating a Civil War rifle. Grant Mercer. And Adrian beside him, cataloging. With the easy confidence of men who thought they owned the room. Seeing Adrian, my mentor, my friend handling stolen artifacts, made my stomach twist. We need photos before we call it in, Sloane said, lifting her phone. That's when Grant Mercer looked up and spotted us. Damn, he growled, going for his gun. Told you she was getting too close? Adrian spun, face washed white. Clara, what are you doing here? Stopping you, I said, surprised my voice held steady. Grant Mercer's weapon was out, pointed at Sloane. Drop it, Phillips. Slow. Her hands moved deliberate to her holster, never breaking eye contact with me. In that glance, a whole conversation flashed. Trust, resolve, and something that squeezed my chest tight. You don't have to do this, Grant, she said, calm. We can work something out. Work something out? He barked a laugh. You and your girlfriend have been nosing around for weeks. Too late for deals. The word girlfriend sent heat through me, despite the danger. Even the dirty cops saw what Sloane and I were barely naming. Adrian edged forward, shaky. Maybe we can be reasonable. Shut up, Grant snapped. You landed us here with your sloppy security. Then Sloane moved years of training, firing at once as she dove sideways, drawing and rolling behind a crate. His shot went wide, shredding ancient wood inches from my head. Run, she shouted. I snatched Adrian's laptop from the table and sprinted for the rear exit, Sloane's precise return fire covering me. Grant cursed and charged after us, footsteps pounding in the cavernous dark. We burst into an alley. Sloane's hand found mine, and we tore through the maze of warehouses. My lungs burned, but adrenaline kept my legs moving until we hit her car. My place, I gasped as the engine caught. It's closer? 20 minutes later, we stood in my living room, breath still ragged, checking each other for wounds. The laptop sat on the coffee table like proof we'd made it out. You hurt? She asked, fingertips gentle over a scrape on my arm. I'm okay. You okay? Her voice shook, and I saw the tremor in her hands as she reholstered. The adrenaline crash stripped us raw. We'd almost died, and the reality hit hard. Sloane, I whispered, and then she was kissing me with fierce urgency, not tentative this time. Need relief, the wild joy of being alive. Her mouth was warm, demanding. I answered with equal hunger, my fingers in her hair. We found the bedroom without breaking apart, hands learning each other with urgent curiosity. Her skin was soft under the knit of her sweater. When she breathed, my name against my throat, something inside me opened completely. Later, tangled in sheets with moonlight spilling across the floor, Sloane traced lazy circles on my shoulder. Her breath had evened out, but her pulse still thudded against my chest. I started. Yeah, she murmured, kissing my collarbone. We'd crossed every line, professional, personal. There was no sliding back to adversaries or even just co-workers. Whatever came next, we were in it together. We should probably report what we found, she said at last. In a few minutes, I replied, pulling her closer. I wanted to hold the moment before the world broke in again. Thursday morning, Sloane called in sick for the second day straight. Internal Affairs was digging into the warehouse shooting, and she couldn't face another round of questions about a compromised relationship with a civilian witness. They're acting like Grant's the injured party, she said, pacing my kitchen in borrowed clothes while I poured coffee. 23 years on the job, and suddenly I'm the issue. Her blonde hair was sleep-tousled, and seeing her in my oversized Stanford tee did unhelpful things to my focus. What about what we pulled? Locked up pending review, which could Take months. Her tone went flat. His lawyers crying entrapment, claiming her entry was illegal. I set the mug down harder than I meant to, so they skate. Maybe, probably. Her blue eyes looked haunted. I trusted him, Clara. 3 years. Trusted him with my life. How did I miss he was dirty? The crack in her voice tightened my chest. I'd handled Adrian's betrayal, but hers cut deeper. Partnerships are built on absolute trust. Without that, people get hurt. Come here, I said. She folded into me like she belonged there, face tucked against my neck. I held on while her shoulders shook, smoothing her hair until her breathing leveled. I keep thinking I should transfer, she whispered. Start over. Is that what you want? I want to fix this, I just don't know how. I drew back to meet her eyes and saw the woman who'd shielded me in the warehouse and risked her career to hit corruption in her own ranks. We'll figure it out, I said. Together, something eased. And her then gratitude mingling with want. When she kissed me, it was slow and thorough, like she was memorizing the taste of a better future. We made love again that afternoon, not frantic this time, but curious and unhurried. I learned she had a faint scar on her shoulder from a rookie mishap, but a kiss at her throat stole her breath. That afterward, she looked at me like I was something rare. She feared she'd have to return. I've never felt this with anyone, she confessed as late light pulled across the bed. Felt what? Safe. Like I could tell you anything and you wouldn't judge me. I traced the line down her spine, amazed at how perfectly we fit. Try me. Silence stretched so long I thought she'd drifted off. Then I knew I was gay at 15, but I never said it out loud. Even after I joined the department, I kept it locked down. Figured that would be simpler, and was it? Lonely as hell. I dated, but nothing serious. Nothing that felt worth the risk of stepping into the open. She rolled to face me, blue eyes steady. The admission settled between us with weight. This wasn't just attraction anymore. It was the start of building something real, despite a world that liked to pry things apart. Clara, she said quietly, when this case is finished, what then? What do you want? I want to keep waking up with you. I want actual dates, not hiding. Out in my apartment. I want to stop being afraid of people's opinions. Her honesty stole my breath. The woman who didn't flinch at danger was handing me her heart with no guarantees. Then that's what we'll do, I said. A real smile first. And days lit her face, just like that. Just like that. She kissed me, soft and sure, and something fell into place between us. Whatever came, we'd face it side by side. That evening, while Sloane reviewed case notes at my kitchen table, I pretended to catalog inventory and kept getting derailed. By the way she chewed a pen when thinking, how her hair slid across her brow when she leaned in. I have an idea, I blurted. One brow lifted. If we can't nail Grant and Adrian for the thefts, maybe we can prove they're still moving product. Go on. I tugged my laptop closer, fingers flying. The museum's black tie fundraiser is next weekend. Money donors, very close circles. What if we stage a private sale under that cover and catch them in real time? Her eyes brightened as the shape clicked. You want to go undercover? I want to finish this. She reached across, lacing her fingers through mine, thumb brushing my knuckles. It's risky. If Grant figures it out, then we don't let him. Her look was half admiration, half worry. You sure? I thought of Adrian's deceit, of artifacts that belonged to Oakland being siphoned to private vaults, of the faith Sloane was placing in me anyway. Unsure, I said. You? Her smile turned fierce. With you, I'm ready for anything. Saturday night, the Oakland Museum glittered with flute glasses and couture. The fundraiser roared under vaulted ceilings, donors drifting beneath priceless displays, while a quartet threaded Mozart through the atrium. I wore a black cocktail dress Sloane had helped me choose, brunette hair pinned up to show vintage earrings on loan from the collection. Every detail had to land for what we were about to try. You look unreal, Sloane murmured while we paused for photos at the entrance. She'd cleaned up in a navy suit that sharpened her athletic lines, blonde hair twisted into a sleek updo. To anyone watching, we were just another affluent couple backing the arts. Remember, I breathed, We're collectors from Portland. You cashed out of tech. I inherited. Got it. And if it goes sideways, it won't. I squeezed her hand. Trust me, the plan was simple on paper. Through cutouts, we'd leaked word that discreet buyers would pay top dollar for Oakland history, no questions. If Adrian and Grant were still in the game, they'd bite. At 9:30, Adrian drifted toward us by the Gold Rush exhibit, tucks tight across his nerves. Clara, you look wonderful, he said, voice varnished with forced charm. Thanks, Adrian. This is Sloan Hart, my partner. He and Sloan shook brief, wary. Behind wire rims, his eyes kept flicking over the room. I wondered, he said carefully. Have you heard whispers about private collectors pursuing Oakland memorabilia? My pulse ticked up. What sort of whispers? Nothing concrete, just chances for serious buyers to acquire pieces outside traditional channels. Sloan leaned in a fraction. We're always interested in the unusual. Adrian scanned again, then tipped his head toward a side corridor, perhaps somewhere quieter. We followed through familiar back halls to a storage area. Grant waited there, stuffed into evening wear that didn't suit his bulk. These are the buyers I mentioned, Adrian said. Grant took us in with a cop's inventory, eyes catching on details. You two look familiar. We hit a lot of openings, Sloan answered smoothly. Maybe San Francisco last month, maybe. His hand rested casual near his jacket, where I knew he carried his off-duty piece. Adrian says you like historical items? Very much, I said. Especially pieces with complicated provenance, things institutions struggle to place. That hooked them. Some of Adrian's tension unspooled into a smile. We may have access to certain items, he said. Gold Rush documents, early police memorabilia, Civil War pieces, all authentic, all with remarkable stories. All stolen, Sloan said, quiet and flat. The room's temperature dropped. Grant's hand twitched toward his weapon, but Sloan was faster. Her gun appeared, steady on his chest. Oakland PD, you're both under arrest. Then the floor fell out. Grant lunged, flipping a display as Sloan's backup officers she'd queued up silently poured in from two doors. Glass exploded, alarms wailed, and in the main hall guests screamed as the realization spread. Adrian bolted. I stepped into his path. The man who'd mentored me glared. With raw hate. You foolish girl, he hissed. Do you know how much you've cost us? How much history you've ruined? Grant fought two officers at once, training making him lethal, even outnumbered. Sloan moved to help, leaving Adrian and me for one crucial beat. It didn't have to go this way, Adrian said, yanking a small revolver from his jacket. You could have kept quiet. Before he could lift it, Sloan was behind him, barrel at the base of his skull. Drop it, now. The revolver clanged to the floor. His shoulders sagged as cuffs clicked home. 20 minutes later, the atrium was clear, except for police and techs. Grant and Adrian sat in separate cruisers, their scheme finally dragged into light. Sloan found me in the restroom, rinsing a slice on my palm where flying glass had caught me. It's done, she said. Over. I met her eyes in the mirror suit scuffed. Hair coming loose, blue gaze bright with victory and something warmer. We did it, I breathed. You did it. That was sharp work, Clara. She stepped in, gently turning my hand to check the cut. The closeness of the gesture, here of all places, sent my heart racing. Sloan, I started. I know too many eyes. Her smile cut through the chaos. Later, definitely later. We walked back into the gallery together, and I caught our reflection in the dark glass. Two women who began on opposite sides and had become something rare. The case was closing, and our story had only just begun. 6 months on, I climbed the courthouse steps in my best suit, ready to testify in State of California v. Evans and Roberts. The press storm had been relentless, but Sloan and I had held steady. Grant drew 15 years for theft, corruption, and attempted murder. Adrian took 12+ restitution to the museum. Justice didn't mend everything, but it landed true. Sloan waited outside the courtroom in dress blues, every inch the decorated detective. IA had cleared her, and the department had pinned Detective Sergeant on her for cracking the case. Ready? She asked, straightening my collar with a familiar touch. With you always. We'd been living together 3 months, shuttling between her place and mine until we found a space that felt like ours. The drift from adversaries to partners to lovers had been surprisingly smooth, like we'd been orbiting this outcome the whole time, waiting to lock in. After my testimony, we walked downtown hand in hand, them caring who noticed. She'd come out to her squad last month. There'd been a few awkward beats, but respect carried the day. Remember when you swore you hated me? I teased as we stopped for coffee at the shop where we'd had our first real talk. I never hated you, she said, stealing a sip of my latte. I was terrified of you. Terrified? You were so fierce about your work, so uncheckable about what mattered. I knew if I let myself get close, I'd fall straight through. Her candor still stole my breath. The woman who stared down armed men without blinking could be unguarded with me in ways that felt like gifts. Good thing you fell anyway, I said, leaning across the table to kiss her. Best call I ever made. That afternoon, we wandered back to Earl Donovan's shop, pulled by curiosity and the comfort of ritual. He clocked us at once. Well, if it isn't the lady who kicked off all that excitement, he grinned. Read about the verdict glad those crooks got theirs. We actually came to thank you, I said. If you hadn't warned me, someone was sniffing around. That badge. Just doing my part, Earl said, then grew thoughtful. Funny thing, I've got something you might like. He vanished into the back and returned with a small velvet box. Inside lay a 1920 engagement ring art deco lines, a perfect. Emerald framed by tiny diamonds. Estate sale last week, he said. Belonged to Lillian Jo, one of Oakland's first female officers. Figured it ought to land with someone who honors history. Sloan and I looked at each other. The ring was gorgeous, but more than that, it felt like a sign. How much? Sloan asked. For you too. 300. She bought it without blinking. Outside, on the busy sidewalk, she turned to me, blue eyes alight and serious. Clara Weston, 6 months ago, I thought you were the most infuriating woman I'd ever met. Now I know you're the most infuriating woman I'll ever love. She dropped to one knee right there on Piedmont Avenue and held up the ring. Will you marry me? Traffic slowed. People stopped. All I saw was Sloan, offering a future I hadn't dared picture. Yes, I laughed through sudden tears. Absolutely yes. The ring slid on, like it had been waiting for my hand all along. When she stood and kissed me, the small crowd clapped. Think Lillian Jo would approve? I asked, watching the emerald catch the light. I think she'd be proud, Sloan said. Two women who wouldn't back down, building something worth keeping. We celebrated at home with Chinese takeout and champagne, sketching plans for a spring wedding, maybe a rescue dog, definitely more rides in the hills. No more mysteries, Sloan said as we curled together on the couch. I'm ready for a boring life with you. Boring might be overrated, I said. What if I told you the museum is planning an expedition to a shipwreck off the California coast? She groaned and buried her face in my shoulder. Clara Weston, you'll be the end of me. Roberts Phillips. I corrected, grinning. And not if I beat you to it by dying of happiness. She kissed me soft, warm, full of promise. Outside, Oakland glittered in the dusk, the city that had brought us together unrolling like a gift. We started as opponents, became allies, and found love in the gap between what we thought we wanted and what we truly needed. It felt like the perfect beginning,